my God, sweet mother of pearl, by the way. Lindsay, this is one of my I don't have many Patreon accounts. I don't.
I only have one,
there are a lot
but
of people,
now I have two.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are like, you need to get a Patreon account. I'm like, I don't need any more than I have. I only got a couple of Patreon accounts. This is my first Patreon account. This is the first account I ever got that was a Patreon account.
These boys, are you saying these boys popped your cherry?
Take it easy there, pal.
Ayo.
The war's over. We'll get new parts for our heads.
Hello.
Yeah,
Ayo.
hi. Good morning. By the way, each week they discuss a piece of classic genre fiction. Talented voice actors bring the text to life. Music and sound effects create atmosphere, while the occasional guest experts show up to make things classy. Of course, I'm talking about Strange Studies of Strange Stories, friends of the show, who we have managed to somehow get on the phone at the same time for the first time in a long time. Chad Fifer and Chris Lackey are both here. Good morning to you both.
Hey, we did it.
You made it.
Look at us. We're doing it. We're doing it. This is so exciting. And so, guys, during the break, Jim said to me, Lindsay, do you want to do the intro? And I'm like, these are your guys. Like, he loves you guys as if, I mean, he's 100% creeping in your bushes at all times. And we mean that as a total compliment. So I was like, you got to do this intro. I will come in with the absurdity. But we're so happy to make this work. And it was funny, Jimmy, I read into it 1,020% that we never were able to properly get them on together on that other platform. But magically, when we launch our own platform and take control of the situation, here we all are together.
Somehow making it work.
Achievement unlocked.
I know.
There it is.
It really is an achievement unlocked.
Congratulations on the new show, guys.
Thank you very much. We're really, I mean, it's been so much fun because we actually chat with people online on YouTube, on Facebook. All of it's happening simultaneously on a gazillion places, so it's like trying to keep up with stuff. You got a big hello from the Doodah Man, by the way. He's also letting us know he had a 63 Austin Healey, because we were talking about cars previously. I did, guys, by the way, welcome. I'm so glad to see that you guys keep on going. I'm really excited, though, because July is coming. I'm just going to say it right now. July is coming. And I want you to tell Lindsay what Julys are. Chad, we can start with you and then pivot to Chris.
We call it Fueli because we do fantasy fiction in the Conan the Barbarian tradition. And if you've ever read any stories about Conan the Barbarian, written by the author Robert E. Howard, he uses the word fuse a lot, which describes muscular stature.
T-H-W-E-W, yes.
Yeah, T-H-E-W. Conan's thews were poised panther-like before he dives in to fight a monster. And we do fiction like that all of July. And actually, we are going to do a two-parter on the Conan the Barbarian story called The Scarlet Citadel this month, which is sort of the first dungeon crawler story. It's where it was a big influence on Dungeons and Dragons. It's just Conan going through some pits, fighting monsters. It's going to be awesome.
How do you really feel about it, though?
There's no excitement at all.
I feel great about it.
I kind of figured that. Chris, can we kind of pivot? I said pivot. Let's turn to you, by the way. I always feel like when you guys do these through lives, you're almost kind of like having to contain Chad's enthusiasm. Is that? Do you feel like you're dampening your own by doing that, though? Because I really want your Robert E. Howard spirit to come out too.
God, no, yes, I want my fuse to be rippling as well. I want to be out there oiled up, tackling some monsters, punching some judges. You know, that's another thing that Conan did a couple of times. You know, that guy doesn't play by anybody's rules.
I just want to let
Conan, he hates civilization and all of its trappings. So oftentimes,
Same.
Robert E. Howard, he's a small town Texan guy who really hated the people in power, and it comes out in those stories. What Chris is referring to is there's one where Conan's in a court in the beginning, and he goes, you know what, I don't want to deal with this, and he just splits the judge's skull in two and takes off and gets on a ship. It's great.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite moments in any story of all time. He gets sentence passed on him, Lindsay, and he goes, yeah, I'm not accepting that, and then just kills the judge. That's enough of that. That's enough. You
guys are who? So I got to say, I did not. I had not even heard of H.P. Lovecraft or and y'all's kind of work until I met Jimmy, and then he introduced me to this whole world, and then he introduced me to y'all and everything that you do. And it's funny, I have some friends staying with me right now this weekend, and I was doing, finishing up some show prep this morning, and they knew who you guys were and your work. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I love being introduced to something and then realizing, oh, shoot, I am too late to the party, but at least I arrived. But you guys are super fun. I want to talk about y'all's connection because I always say, as a songwriter myself, or anything I do creatively, I'm always looking for the director to my producer or producer to my director, however you want to say it. And I have that a lot in Jimmy Mack. He and I, our partnership really, I feel like, balances out, and you guys do as well. And Chad, I know you're a musician, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do I have that right? Okay. And Chris, with your roots in with RPG writing, podcasting, and just how you, stylistically how y'all come together feels really cool and balanced. And I'm just curious how you if it's a ongoing conscious conversation when you're all like, okay, you do it, you do well, I do it, I do well, or did y'all kind of did that dance magically work itself out because you identify each other's strengths and, dare I say, weaknesses? Oh, we'll go to Chad first, or whoever.
Okay.
Or whoever.
Yeah, well, we've known each other for almost 40 years. We grew up together in small town Illinois, and
But that doesn't mean you can work together well. That does not mean you can work together well.
That's true, and you can have a friendship, but once you start getting into deadlines and getting things done, then things can get stressful. But we were also roommates for a while in our early 20s, and you work a lot of things out in that situation. So I remember that we used to fight a lot more, but at some point we were like, hey, the best way to deal with this is just tell me when you're upset, and then I'll try to make that okay, and vice versa. And I think we still kind of operate that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we're pretty honest with each other about everything. So if somebody's doing something that's bugging the other person, just come out and say it. And there's never any, I'm worried about what this person's going to say or think, because you'll know right away. So there's no second guessing. There's no doubt. It's just get it done and do your job and try not to mess it up.
Get her done. Get out of the way.
It's just aggressive. But Chris is an excellent illustrator and excellent artist. I have no ability in that regard, and then I do the music side of things, and so we do have complementary skills. But then we both love the material, and that's what really matters.
Yeah.
I wanted to let our listeners know, and I can take care of this in short order. This whole project began to simply go through every single one of H.P. Lovecraft's stories, just two friends getting together to kind of put it together. And if you guys go back to the beginning, you can hear that development. You can hear the podcast get slowly better and better, technically, more confidence, more voices come in and all that kind of stuff. What it has turned into is something extraordinary that requires genuine programming. You can't just be like, okay, what did he write next? And I was kind of curious, Chris, if you could explain to our listeners how it is you go about the business of not only selecting the stories that you guys are going to cover. I know you have programming sometimes, but how it is you select those stories, and then how it is you pick the readers for them, because the readers tend to be exceptional.
Yeah, well, we've been very lucky that we know a lot of different performers and voiceover people that we've known since we're in LA and everything together. So that's great for the readers. Now, for the selection of the material, it's sort of become a bit of a feedback loop where we're getting comments and suggestions from listeners that they're saying, hey, you guys dug this story. You know what else you'd like is this other thing. Specifically, there's a story, there's the Simon of Gitta stories that we're covering in July. Which is kind of a swords and sandals, Roman Cthulhu sort of thing, which I never heard of before. But when we discovered it, it's totally fused all over the place. It's great. But I never would have heard about it if it wasn't for the people that listen to the show. So we've got this kind of great community that we've built. And from them, they're able to kind of point us in different directions. And then we check out the material. Not all of it is totally right for the show, but a lot of it is.
One thing that we respect as a rule is there's no living authors for the most part.
Yeah.
So we're always in the kind of classic people who, we're a few decades away from the present in general. So that is one guiding premise. But on top of that, we don't schedule too far ahead because it's kind of nice to just let the collective unconscious, whether it's the listeners or what we happen to be catching on television or whatever, sort of settle it for us as we approach those months.
Ooh, that's fascinating. That keeps you on your toes, but you're also like, you don't know what's coming next either.
But then things happen like, we just did an episode on the Universal Frankenstein films because we do bonus episodes where we'll talk about movies and that kind of thing. We dropped it, and then Guillermo del Toro dropped his trailer for the new Frankenstein movie the next day. And we didn't plan for that to happen, but little stuff like that pops up that's so fun.
Means you're right where you're supposed to be, guys, clearly.
Exactly.
I have a question, Chad, from a music standpoint. How, and okay, I'm going to see if I can make this question make sense. So as a, like, you know, and as a songwriter, there's a big difference when I'm like writing for a project, like, okay, this is going to be used in this, or this is for this artist or whatever, versus just going in and free flowing writing one day when the spirit moves you, so to speak. But I'm curious how that translates in, yeah, like your musical sensibility when you're building a sonic landscape or something for one of the shows, because when you're producing for mood, trying to create a score or something for the mood, how do you okay, how do I want to say this? How do you create not a new genre, but it's like without being like the cliche, okay, there's suspense here, so da 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 da, like right. Without making
Jaws
the cliche
today,
song. I know, I heard, that's why I threw that in. How do you like not do the cliche mood sound for, you know what I mean? Like, how do you think outside of the box to be like, I'm going to create a new mood for something that people already think they know what it sounds like?
It's a really interesting, because we will score generally underneath somebody reading. So the number one rule is stay out of the way of that. If anything's going to distract from the actual words, that's bad. So there's a lot of really busy stuff that I will have written for a film or something you don't want to use. For me, when I was doing early acting training, I was in the Second City Theater in Los Angeles. And one of the things we learned was that you don't have time to build a set. You don't have time to build a costume. So when you come out and you do a scene, how can you use the smallest bit of anything to indicate what the scene is? Can you just throw a scarf on and now you're a wealthy, patron of the arts?
Yeah.
And similarly, when I'm doing music for this, it might just be a low tone. Is there some tiny accent or some bit of creep that I can put in there to indicate that it's horror without, like you say, screeching violins or something like that?
Right.
It's just the sounds of leaves rustling going to set an atmosphere that then gets people in the mood to hear a Halloween story. Usually it's something like that. So I try to indicate with as little as possible and not get in the way of the reading, which is a little harder to do than you would think.
Oh, no, I think it'd be very hard.
I want to keep developing the theme, but you can't, because you're trying to just set atmospheres for folks who are listening in their car.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pivot to Chris for
pivot.
I'm gonna pivot. I'll pivot to Chris for a second. He got it. Chris got
Thank
it.
you.
Chris is there for us. I wanted to kind of ask this in kind of go in the other direction. So when you guys are picking the readers, and by the way, Lindsay, I'm constantly pitching us to read things for them. I'm not. Don't worry. They haven't.
Oh, sign me up. Put me in, coach.
How do you guys go about picking?
Annoying cheerleader. I can play that role.
They got a couple of short stories that actually deal with that, by the way. Chris, how do you guys make sure you pick the right voice? How do you and Chad figure out how to pick the right voice for the particular story? Because more often than not, you get it right. You know what I'm saying? That it's like, somebody who reads Bradbury is not the somebody who reads Shirley Jackson.
Yeah. Well, we've got a pretty good stable of consistent people that we can choose from, and it's usually a matter of us going in and looking at that and thinking, all right, who's going to be good for this? Occasionally we'll get new people that will submit stuff and be like, hey, I'd love to read for the show, and we listen to them, and then they might not be right for what's coming up, but right for something else coming down the road. And typically, I think one of us makes a suggestion, and usually the other agrees. Like it seems kind of obvious to who should be the reader. And also, if they're available, that's another thing, too. Sometimes we can't get the people that we want, and you'll have to go with the second-tier person, but they're still great. So, it's not that hard.
How'd you get the gig? I was available. Great.
Yeah. So if I ever do a reading for you guys, would you promise me we'll say Jimmy Mack was our second-tier choice? But
he was available. No, and you read everybody's long bios, and then Jimmy Mack, he was available.
He was available.
He was available.
What is it? I actually, guys, in a program for a play once, I had it written. I won't say my actual name, but Jimmy Mack is in this play. That was literally what my bio said. Chowda actually wrote to say Conan beat hack/comic, and Schwarzenegger was the best Conan. Just wanted to add that on our comments that are happening over on YouTube, by the way. I didn't realize that there's a lot of Conans to choose from, by the way. There are a couple.
Conan O'Brien is the only one I know.
Yeah.
You've got Conan O'Brien. But Jason Momoa played Conan in that newer remake.
Okay.
I believe there was a television series where they just went, let's just get another Austrian guy because he's available. And so,
he was available.
Yeah, he was an available Austrian guy with some muscles and very little acting talent. But
oh wow, yeah.
Schwarzenegger's the best.
I wanted to tell Lindsay this too, because I don't know if I told you this, Lindsay, but what's funny is that the books Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft share the same universe. They share the same mythology. A lot of the monsters. I got that right, guys? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
They share the same universe. The difference is the joke I make is that H.P. Lovecraft's main characters faint, and Robert E. Howard say kill them all and let Cthulhu sort them out. Is kind of the difference.
Yeah.
It's a difference of tone.
Yes.
And that's really the kind of thing here, because a lot of these books, and I don't mean they exist in the same multi-universes, but a lot of this stuff, a lot of people cover a lot of the same subject matter when you guys do these stories. It really is about tone and approach with a lot of the stories. Have you guys noticed recurring patterns that doesn't make the stories predictable, but they do they all begin to feel like they're set in the same universe after a while? Either one of you can answer that.
Because we cover the horror genre, we also do science fiction and we do fantasy where some more unexpected things can happen. But a lot of horror stories do follow a template of revelation and investigation. Somebody looks into something and it turns out it's real bad and there's a monster. And it can seem like the same story over and over.
It's trucking radio. Okay, I got it.
But yeah, well, what's going on with that author? What are they really trying to get across? Because generally horror is some kind of metaphor, whether it's for addiction or it's for race relations, or it's, there's so many things you could tackle with that metaphor. And so what we try to tease out is what was the author really going for here? Or were they dealing with something and didn't even know they were dealing with it? And how does this speak to the everyday experience? The reason we call it Strange Studies of Strange Stories is because we look for stories that estrange our own reality. It's very easy for us to get used to things and not be shocked by them anymore. And what a good story will do is take a normal thing that happens to you and put it in a fantastic setting so that you can kind of re-experience it and re-examine it. And so we look for stories that are going to do that, and a lot of horror does it very excellently.
I realized actually the other day how much being a country music writer, I think I talked about this in Country Music News or something, Jim, but the idea, I'm like, country music and horror actually have a lot in common with, as you just said, with addiction and struggle and suspense. And I put it together. So I'm like, I need to write more country horror songs. Sidebar.
By the way, there's a niche for that.
I know, right?
They will back me up here. If you write genuinely spooky, creepy, evil country western music songs, there are people who would rally to your cause. I believe that.
It's going to get weird.
Well, my band, Pitch Black Manor, has a song that's in that vein, and I know that one of our biggest playlists on Spotify we get discovered from is called Goth Cowboy.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, there you go. I'm obsessed. Goth Cowboy. Yeah. I'll be checking that out. Okay, we have to, of course, talk about your Patreon. Everyone can find it. If you go to just to patreon.com, you can find them at /WitchHouseMedia. You can also find out everything you need to know about these guys at strangestudios.com. That'll take you to their page as well.
Strange Studies.
Strange Studies. I'm sorry, strangestudies.com.
They have Strange Studios, by the way, though. They do.
Yes, I'm looking between the two. So strangestudies.com, and then on Patreon, you can find him /WitchHouseMedia. I'm so curious. These kind of things, because this is really, really cool what y'all do. You have one free episode a month for everybody. Anybody can partake in. And then you do 5 subscriber-only shows per month as well. How do you guys... I have yet to dive into that world because I'm this isn't the reason. I've yet to do it because I'm lazy. But my real question is the idea of how you give enough to the free episode that people really genuinely get to have their gateway drug and dip their toe into who you are. And you don't want to dumb that down because you want people to fall in love with you. How do you give enough to the free episode, but that also make that people also realize I gotta pay now to get the rest of the good stuff? Do you know what I mean? Like you don't want to give everything away, but you also are like, I can't make art that isn't all of me. So how do you balance that? That's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night.
I think for us, it's a little bit about our story selection. So when we are doing the free shows, we try and think of the ones that have the greater mass appeal, and we leave the more niche stories for the subscribing audience. So
okay.
If there's something that is popular or that's going on in the news, or something that we feel like can bring people in, we'll cover those types of stories, or by big name authors. And then we'll save the more esoteric stuff for the subscribers. So I think that's kind of the way that we tackle it, but we don't do it any different. It's the same level of enthusiasm, of work that we put into one episode that we do for the for the pay episode. So yeah.
So it's just you. Okay, no, that makes you explain that so simply, and I don't know why my brain never went that way. You're basically saying you get 100% who you guys are. You just get more of it if you subscribe. You get to dive in more. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. And as a listener or consumer of things, I don't always do the deep dive. I appreciate it if somebody's like, once a month is fine with me. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
You can have the free show then. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the way I listen to stuff too. So I think that we'll sometimes sell sponsorships against that, but in general, it's just goodwill. You have to look for people to be, hey, you know what? I'm going to open my wallet and throw some cash these guys' ways. It's a donation, even if they're subscribing, because so many things you can get for free. You just got to say they like it enough that they're going to give us some cash, and how can we make this the best experience that we can?
I've actually asked this question before, but Lindsay and I actually really understand this, is that we have parasocial relationships, of course, with so many of our listeners. Some of them are genuinely our friends. We've met them, got a chance to meet them and all that stuff. There was an episode very early on where one of your friends comes on and he doesn't talk when you ask him a question, and it suddenly dawns on him he's not listening to the show. He's actually in the show. And it's a great moment. And in some ways, like I said, the first time I had you guys on by myself, I'm sitting there talking to you. It almost happened to me where I'm like, oh yeah, they're having a good time talking. This is really a wonderful. Wait a minute, it's my damn show.
This is a great show. Oh right, it's mine.
Can you kind of? I'd love. We haven't got a chance to talk about this. Can you talk about, because you said that great community over there? Because this is important. Can you talk about? And I guess we can start with Chris, the parasocial relationship you have with some folks, and the idea that it's like you almost feel like you know them in a way that you actually don't. Because, like I said, there's a really great groundwork for a horror story and has actually been covered on a few occasions. But can you talk a little bit about the relationships you have with your Patreon supporters, your listeners, your contributors?
Well, yeah, our comments. We have our comment section. That's kind of our main thing that we do on the show. Our interaction is through these posts that people do to each individual episode. And then every month we do what we call the feedback show, where we read selected ones. And then we can actually do feedback on the feedback show, so which we call the feedback loop, where we do feedback on the feedback show. So it can kind of keep coming.
A lot of feedback.
Coming back. It's a lot of feedback. And that's the way that, I do feel like we have common commenters that are every episode they've got something to say, and they're ones that pop up more than others. But I do feel like I genuinely know them, especially from their comments. And some of those I would love to meet. We've met a lot at Necronomicon, the convention that's in Providence, many years ago, but we keep getting new people. So there's lots of people I would love to meet because they just sound like really funny, cool people.
Chad.
Yeah, we've developed. The funny thing is, our audio engineer who helps us with some processing of audio, actually, we've never met because he was initially a friend of, or he was initially a listener of the show. Said, hey, I could probably help you guys clean up some of your plosives and and hiss and that kind of thing. So we said, all right. And I've developed a relationship with him. He reads for the show. He's one of my best friends. We've never met. It just developed over working on the thing. Every once in a while, I have to remind myself, I've never seen this person in person.
No.
Guys, I kid.
We've talked. We've done Skype. And not Skype, but, I still say Skype. Skype doesn't exist anymore. But visually communicate with one another, but we've never met in person. And I've been so lucky, too, where I've met fans that are now, like, awesome friends. Like my buddy Greg Johnson, when I moved to the UK, he lived locally, and he was like, he decided he was going to write me and say, I'm a big fan of your show. I'd love to meet you. And, like, he's one of my best friends in the world now. But our relationship started off where he was a fan of the show, and it was just, I think that people that listen to our show are like-minded, and they have the same sensibility and the same taste that we do. So it's very uncommon that any of these people that would be fans of our show we wouldn't get along with.
Well, and what I'd like to say, too, even if, you said like-minded, maybe perhaps like your content isn't something that I knew about or had interested me before, but why I came on board and got super interested in it outside of Jimmy saying you should be interested in this, which also helps sometimes. But because you guys are that real... You're so likable, first of all, and everything's delivered with a good balance of both. It's funny, it's creepy, and it's also informative. Which I've seen some of your fans comment on. Those are like why they keep coming back. So it's it's a good gateway drug, as well as anyone listening now. If you haven't listened to it, it's going to be something, whether it's your kind of content or not, you're going to have fun, I think. And then that's when you can dive into more and figure out, do I want to be a subscriber? You know, how much more do I lean? Okay, guys, we've just got a couple minutes left, and we asked this of all of our guests because the Road Gang Radio, our new content, is about life on the road, both living, but whether you make your living on the road, but then also if you're a road warrior, you camper, RV life, whatever it is. So we'd like to talk about say it's your weekend, guys, coming up, because it is Friday, whenever your weekend starts. Well, both of you, to answer this question, we have 3 questions. If you could go anywhere this weekend, practically, or not, you can go to the moon if you want. If you could go anywhere this weekend, where are you going? How are you getting there? And what are you listening to along the way? Chris, you first.
Oh, geez. I'm going to Scotland, to the Isle of Lewis, which you have to take a ferry to get there, but it's getting warm here, and it's cooler up in Scotland, and it's beautiful. I would be driving, and what would I be listening to? Probably audiobooks.
Okay, perfect. Chad, to you.
Right now, just the way I'm feeling, I think I'd be in the Caribbean on a speedboat. Can I have a speedboat?
You can have whatever you want, Chad.
And
Damn, I want to change my answer.
You can go back.
No, I'm on a speedboat. I'm in the Caribbean, and I'm just playing Boston. Just really loud.
Oh my God!
But you know what? They're Boston deep cuts. Nobody knows who the band is.
Because you don't want anybody singing along and getting in the way of your vibe. I like that. I feel
Absolutely not.
You want to be humming
Even
the.
I won't recognize them.
You want it to be the man I'll never be. That's what you want to be listening to, man, with that big, giant, epic anthem riff. By the way, let me show you how much parasocial relationships are wonderful. When my wife booked these guys for the show, Claire called me, and all that Claire said was, ashes, asses. And that's what she said to me. I just wanted to let that sink in for you guys. And I instantly knew who they had booked on the show. I just can't thank you guys enough. We will be in touch again. You know we will have you back. I am so excited about Thulai. And our good friend Scott Cooper says, I absolutely love the content today. He gave you all a gold star. Thank you guys so much, man.
Chad Fifer and Chris Lackey, strangestudies.com. Check them out. Of course, also go. You should be a subscriber, but if you're not ready yet, just go start getting the free episodes.
Get ready.
Patreon/Witch House Media. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.